Okay, well, another caller who is a little shy to come on the air, but the caller basically wanted to make the point that until all of us in Canada can change sort of what we've learned from the very beginning, the prejudice against Aboriginal people and their very existence, and I think a lot of the sort of hate and stuff that goes back and forth is from being embarrassed to have to realize what you've sort of been backing.
It's a case of education. You have to educate yourself, and there's enough resources out there right now. The web is fantastic. Just be real on what you're trying to look for, what you're trying to find out. Colonialism has existed here in Canada from the very beginning, and it is a very diabolical form of racism to be colonial. And you see what colonial governments have done globally: Africa, Asia, Middle East, South America. They've done this thing over and over again. And for us, ordinary Canadians, for you to feel that it's not your fault, well, that's fine. It isn't your fault. Maybe it isn't your fault directly, but you're living in a society that condones it through its government. Again, it's a concentration camp. It's basically an Indian reservation here in Canada today, 2011. A concentration camp has no resources, no fresh water, no sanitation, very little heat, very little food, a lot of disease, a lot of death, and that's the reality of your country, Canada. So, you have to really be real and look in the mirror. Because your white picket fence is a nice thing to have, but there's a whole bunch of other things that are on the other side of that fence that have to be addressed once and for all. So here we go.
Okay, well, another caller. Sorry, I am having calls across to the board, but the caller wanted to know what our views were on climate warming, global warming and climate warming, because he said that he used to believe that climate warming, climate change was happening, that it was humans' fault, and so on. And then he said he started to do a little bit more investigation, and he found sort of conflicting ideas, and he's starting to get suspicious that, in actuality, a lot of the climate issues and things like that people bring forward, it's all about the corporations and the governments taxing you more, controlling what you can use, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And I think, to a certain extent, he's right, but I would always put this statement at the end of any conversation on climate change, and that is, I don't really care if we're responsible for climate change or if that's Mother Earth's natural plan, but we are definitely over-polluting our own environment, and that has to stop immediately. And that's, and if that helps global warming, great, but I don't, maybe global warming is totally beyond our control.
No, it's not. We have the sun come up every day somewhere on the earth, and the sun is the source of life. So sustainably, we have to get our scientists, our engineers, and our free thinkers, everybody together in the same room, and utilize our natural energy sources. So that's the tides of the ocean, the winds of the atmosphere, the sun. This is all doable, very, very doable in a very short time. We just have to stop and say, okay, this is what we have to do. We must do this. And this is not what's happening in Durban because of Canada's position. And it's about greed for Canada and Alberta. Greed.
Yeah. That's what Stephen Harper's all about.
Yeah, it's about greed. So, for us as a race, we can do this. We can change our direction. But again, we have to make that happen. And educating yourself about all issues is important. But, pick one. Pick one and dedicate your life toward that. Then you might be able to say at the end of your day, okay, I did my part to save my grandchildren's earth.
Right.
I did my part. You know, if we can't do it all as an individual or a collective, we have to do it in our own way with passion and the direction of life to say at the end of your life, I did my part.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I did my best to contribute. And
if you don't do anything, then you really can't expect your own great-grandchildren or grandchildren to look back and say, yeah, they were great.
Yeah,
you know?
thanks, Grandma.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kukum.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and just at the very end of that thought, that pollution happens not only on Mother Earth, it also happens in our hearts and in our minds. And this is also a place where I would encourage people to stop polluting. Stop polluting your mind and your spirit with negative things and with hate that's ungrounded.
Yeah, like I said, when I see a person coming and I'm going to have an interaction with this person, I try and see how much dust is coming up behind them, which means how much baggage are they dragging along in their life, and they want to have an intelligent discussion, right?
Yeah.
So, most people you can read pretty clear right away, but there's a few that are pretty sneaky about what they're dragging along, right? And like you said, it has to start with yourself. Put your own mind in the right place.
Yeah.
And, and don't carry around all these misconceptions, prejudices, and all these
myths
things.
and mistruths.
Yeah,
exactly.
it's not necessary.
It isn't, and life is way better once you rid yourself of other people's hatred that they've taught you to carry around.
Exactly.
So yes, believe me, folks, it all starts with the individual. The individual changing. We each have to change our attitude. We have to love Mother Earth and learn to love each other instead of all that other bull.
Yeah, so to all our listeners out there in Radio Land, look at your kids tonight, look at your grandkids, look at your parents, and try and put that thought in your mind. I'm going to do my part for the Earth. I'm going to do it for you.
Yeah.
Right. Which means all of us living today, we got to do it for everybody else because we're all going to be here.
Yeah.
And we have to make it happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Our time, we've already reached critical mass.
Yeah.
And we have to change that attitude soon. And the world is changing. Incredible things are happening. But again, it's the Joe Blow guy on the ground that really has to stop and say, okay, it's time to get involved. And that's happening, with Occupy 99.
Exactly. And also, please look into your hearts and look into your minds and break down those barriers of learned prejudices and reach out and touch someone from another community and help out. I'm embarrassed by our government's total lack of compassion for the people who live in northern Canada, and it matters not who they, what, where, or anything.
Yeah.
It's that they're people,
Exactly.
and they're Canadians.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid we're out of time, Sootaanaah.
All right.
Thank you so much for coming.
Next week is a holiday or not?
No, not next week. Next week we'll be here. You and I are going to put together a special for the 22nd, okay?
Okay.
Because I have to hoof it.
But we won't physically be here, but it'll be a recorded show, right?
You betcha. We won't leave our listening audience without something wonderful.
Okay, maybe we'll have to give you guys something to think about over the holidays.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so we're going to close off. We're going to hear a little bit. I'm going to send this out to Barclay Batosh. I finally found Nichimus by Edward Bull. Please remember the words of the late great Jack. Pakaseya moen, sakihitoen, mio mametane chikan.
You're going to turn into a Korean pretty soon. That's all right. That's good.
That's excellent. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to see it to Paolo and I'll hear this. What's this? That's a British Cree accent.
You got it, buddy.
All right.
Thanks to everybody for listening. Thank you so much, Sootaanaah, for coming. And we'll see you next week.
Yep, next week.
Thanks, Amaga.
Anya.